Good morning. You're listening to Wire from our on-campus studio in Boston. The views expressed in this show do not represent Wentworth Institute of Technology or the colleges of Fenway. If you have questions or concerns, please contact Chris Scanlon at 617-989-4211. The time is now 10 o'clock, and the date is October 18, and you're listening to Indecision 2016. We cover the political race from your perspective. Today on the show, we'll be discussing various political scandals in this election. I'm your host, Lev Koledov, and I'm joined in the studio today with my co-host, Matt Bennett. But first, the news.
Hello. The weather today is mostly cloudy with a chance of showers this morning, then mostly sunny this afternoon. Patchy fog this morning, highs in the lower 70s, northeast winds around 5 miles an hour, becoming south with gusts up to 30 miles an hour this afternoon. Chance of rain about 40%. And the weather tonight is partly cloudy in the evening, then becoming mostly cloudy. Lows in the lower 60s, southwest winds at 10 to 15 miles an hour, with gusts up to 25 miles per hour. Our first news story today is a baby was stolen while her car was stolen from a gas station. A mother's car was stolen from a gas station with her child inside in Boston Monday. Boston police said the call came at 9:24 p.m. about report of
I won't give in now, not for any amounts. Don't it feel like sunshine after all? The world we love forever gone. We're only just as happy as everyone else thinks. Now don't that feel like sunshine after all? The world we love forever gone. We're only just as happy as everyone else seems to think we are.
Boston police said that the statement Monday. Police later learned the 2-year-old child was injured during the incident and was taken to the local hospital for treatment on a non-life-threatening gunshot wound. The toddler was in the back seat of her father's car when she was shot. The father, who is not injured and has gang ties, was the intended target of shooting, according to police. The time is now 10:03.
Hello, everybody. This is Dean Wenner, and you're listening to my favorite radio station, Wentworth Internet Radio and Entertainment.
Do you like rock concerts?
Yes, of course.
Wire. All the action you need.
Keep going. You're on.
Hello, we're back. You're listening to Indecision 2016, Wentworth's own political coverage of the November elections, where today we're investigating and talking about scandals in the election. I'm your host, Lev Koledov, and again, I'm joined in the studio this morning with Matt Bennett. Later on in the hour, we'll be joined by Professor Aaron Carpenter, and we'll be talking about the Hillary email scandal. Okay, we're going to begin by talking a little bit about our first topic, which is the Trump hot mic scandal. So in regards to that, there's obviously a lot to talk about. Candidate Trump essentially advocated for inappropriate touching of other people's genitals. So
said some words we certainly can't say on air here.
Yeah, so one of the biggest one of the hottest topics in regards to that is talking about whether or not that should actually impact his eligibility to run as president. And while I think that perhaps obviously what he said was absolutely awful and disgusting, I don't think that necessarily disqualifies him from actually running for president.
Oh, I couldn't disagree more. I mean, for me, he's really talking about breaking the law, and it's
Right.
a law that's ultimately it's a violent law. It's not some law that's victimless.
Right. That's true as well. That's certainly true. Now, as we understand, the conversation that took place was actually recorded on the bus in what they considered was private. So what's interesting to think about is whether or not this conversation would be admissible in court, since technically they were talking, I guess, on private grounds and having this conversation in private. Would the person who essentially provided the recording, could they be charged, say, with wiretapping?
Well, it's an interesting question because he was aware of the microphone on him.
Oh, okay.
Because, I mean, he was wired up
Right.
for a news or entertainment piece.
Right.
But he wasn't necessarily aware that the microphone was on, so where does that sort of fall within the scope of wiretapping is really an interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that absolutely is despicable is the fact that he was so open about it, and he just pretty much just went on, and I mean, he pretty much got caught red-handed. One of the more comical things that happened is actually during the second presidential debate, his wife Melania was absent at the end, where she typically, she shows up and she is there, supporting the candidate. But I'm sure that they probably had a very lengthy conversation about that.
That's interesting. I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah.
I have heard the rumors about the certain blouse that she was wearing and whether that was meant to critique Trump or Clinton.
Oh yes, we can. And again, to our listeners, unfortunately, they can't mention certain words on air. But it's really quite interesting to look into and to look back on the second presidential debate and make note of what each of the people was wearing.
Our curious listeners can just Google her blouse.
Exactly. Just Google it. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's so shocking to me about this election in general is just the amount of it's so scandalous. Both candidates, whether it is Hillary or Trump. And in regards to Trump, he already says such provocative things normally, and that I feel like by now it's like nobody's really surprised by this, where he says such awful things on a bus in private, and then people just go, well, of course he would say that. Just look at the things he says in public. Certainly, I think that a lot of people have come to really, really despise this election cycle and just kind of hoping for a quick end.
I certainly do, but I think I couldn't believe what he said when he was talking about, now the shackles are off, when he was talking about reshuffling his campaign staff.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like, wait, that was you restrained before?
Oh, well, yeah, I know. It's honestly despicable. I mean, the thing about, I don't know, I think what's interesting is that the hot mic scandal really highlights who he is when he's alone. It's one of the biggest things about integrity. Integrity is really doing the right thing when nobody is even looking. And in the case of Trump, one could argue that he's certainly a character, that lacks integrity. Because, and this has been seen all over the place, especially during the debates, during the speeches where he would say one thing and then backpedal, what's wrong and whatnot. I think that I think it's interesting because you see this persona in public, and he's already so volatile, so imposing, and then you see him in private, and it's like, wait, this can get worse. We haven't seen nothing yet.
Absolutely. And then you look at the whole Megyn Kelly debacle.
Right.
You look at the fact that I think approximately 10 accusers have come up now. The Rosie O'Donnell issue.
Right.
It's just like, wow, there just keeps being a longer list of women he's offended, attacked in some way.
Yeah, it's really quite incredible how much he can actually, how far he actually goes to go after the people that he just like despises even a little bit, especially on his Twitter account. I mean, it's quite despicable, and it's certainly, I mean, many people would say that's certainly not a presidential behavior, but at the same time, like, legally speaking, it's interesting to talk about, like, whether or not that should be a disqualifying factor from being president, because of course, like, technically he's not necessarily breaking any laws. He talks about breaking the laws, but is talking about breaking the law equate to, actually, doing a crime? So that's one of the more interesting things about this election, where so many things just keep coming out, especially just before, the presidential debates. And obviously, chances are it's not coincidental that these things kind of come out just before the debate. What'll be interesting to see is actually the third presidential debate is this Wednesday. So it's going to be interesting to see if something new will come out from, it's a new scandal will pop out, like today, let's say, and it'll certainly be interesting.
It definitely will, and I mean, I think this is the first time, certainly I can remember, that both major party candidates are pretty much charged with very, very serious crimes.
Right.
You have the Clinton email issue, and then you have Trump with his pending sexual assault allegations, which is pretty serious. I think one of them involves a person who was 12 at the time.
Wow. It's pending
in a New York court at the moment.
Wow, that's really quite disturbing. I mean, he, in that recording on the bus, he actually pretty much just straight up said that, he just can't help himself. He's, just grabs people by their genitals, and I think that's quite awful. And he's quite a character, but again, I think that people have come to sort of expect nothing less of Trump, especially given the speeches that he makes. And in regards to just his whole persona, if you think about it, is very scandalous. It's not like we mentioned before. It's not very presidential. He doesn't have that composure of a patient presidential figure. We see this during the debates where he interrupts all the time. He feels like he has the right to talk overtime. He always, especially in the second debate, he was attacking Anderson Cooper in regards to, oh great, it's 3 against 1. He thinks that he's not getting fair treatment, even though he's basically, shouting and yelling and interrupting.
Well, right, and you see lots of politicians interrupting or maybe talking a little bit overtime. I think Clinton does the same thing.
Right.
But they don't then turn around and whine when they're told to, your time is up. Your time is up. Stop interrupting. They don't whine about it because it looks petty.
Right.
And here you have Trump looking petty on, the national stage, where we have other countries watching as well, and I can't imagine what they must think of us that this man might potentially represent our country.
Right.
When he acts so childish.
No, it's absolutely true, Matt. And honestly, I feel like at this point we're pretty much the laughing stock of the world, because anybody that tunes into our election cycle is just going to see this kind of behavior with that, we basically have, arguably somebody would say, we have a person who's so corrupt to the bone running against an utter idiot who has no filter, who has no concept of politics. Now, granted, some may say that Trump is an excellent businessman, given that, he is rich, he was able to build an empire for himself. But again, and I quote, he said that he had a modest, he loaned a modest, $1 million from his father when he was younger. And I think that just shows at what scale he really thinks that.
Well, and when you start talking about the modest $1 million loan, when you actually start to look at it, it starts to become closer to $200 million, I believe.
Really?
There's a $13 million loan that his father gave him in the form of casino chips, which was investigated by the New York Trade Commission, I believe. But I think that's all we have time for.
All right. I believe it or not, it's actually 10:15, and it's time for a break. When we return, we'll be discussing the Hillary email scandal. You're listening to Indecision 2016 here on Wire, Wentworth's internet radio station.
Trash is recyclable. Just 100 soda cans could save enough energy to light your room for 2 weeks. Beatty Hall and many of the other buildings on campus have recycling bins that are clearly labeled. It only takes a bit of extra time. Your superpower could be reducing waste. This message is brought to you by the Leopard's Den.
Did you know 3 times the amount of water is used to produce a plastic water bottle as it is to fill it? Globally, 53 billion gallons of bottled water are consumed every year. 17 million barrels of oil are used in the production of plastic water bottles. That's enough oil to fuel 1.3 million cars for a year. What's more, 40% of bottled water is taken from municipal water sources like tap water. This message is brought to you by the Witty Committee. For more information, please visit vanthebottle.net.
Would you like a healthy, efficient, and environmentally friendly way to get around Boston? Consider changing your commute for the better by riding a bicycle. Investing in a bicycle can help you travel to work or school faster while benefiting motorists by reducing street congestion. Not to mention the great workout you earn every time you travel. With a fitted helmet and safety lights, anyone can enjoy cycling to their destination safely. More information is available online at massbike.com.
Good morning. You're listening to Indecision 2016, the College of Fenway's political news show looking at the upcoming elections. And this is Wire, Wentworth Institute of Technology's internet radio station. It is now 10:16 a.m., and we're going to turn our attention in this segment to Hillary Clinton email scandal. Later on in the hour, we're going to be joined by Professor Aaron Carpenter, who is a computer science professor at Wentworth. But first, the news.
Today's weather is mostly cloudy with a chance of showers this morning, then mostly sunny this afternoon. Patchy fog this morning, highs in the lower 70s, northeast winds around 5 miles an hour, becoming south with gusts up to 30 miles an hour this afternoon. Chance of rain is 40%. So, this week in sports, Boston's David Pastrnak of the Boston Bruins is ready to go home after taking 2 to 3 games on the season opening road trip. The 20-year-old Pastrnak scored the eventual game winner on Monday night as the Bruins ended their road swing with a 4-1 victory over the Winnipeg Jets. We're excited to get back and see our fans, Pastrnak said. Can't wait to play in the Garden. Pasternak's team, leading fourth goal of the season, came in his 100th career game and was a fortunate one, as he banked a long centering pass off Jets defenseman Tobias Enstrom and in late of the second period. The goal extended his point streak to 3 games and gives him 6 points on the season. The Patriots had a vision of what could be when they acquired Martellus Bennett in a trade with the Bears this spring. They knew they had sure-handed 2015 All-Pro Rob Gronkowski, who developed into Tom Brady's favorite target over the 7 years in New England. The question was whether the veteran Bennett, a 2014 Pro Bowl selection, could fit into both the Patriots' unique culture and having to share the field with an established tight end. In the past 2 weeks, are any indication, the Patriots may have created a perfect two-headed monster. Since Brady has returned to the field from his 4-game suspension, Gronkowski and Bennett have helped New England put out the best offensive numbers of the season. The time is now 10:18.
This is the rush of
Are you an
icy air
architecture student looking to break into the professional field?
Are we muted?
Wentworth's chapter of the American Institute of Architecture Students can help you do just that. A student-run organization, AIAS hosts a variety of events that can help prepare any level design student for the professional world. If you would like more information, you can email them at aias@wit.edu or go to aias-wit.weebly.com.
Wear sunglasses in the summer but leave them at home for the winter? You may want to reconsider. It is actually significantly more important to wear sunglasses in the winter, as the white snow can reflect about 80% of ultraviolet rays. In the short term, this can result in sunburned eyes or snow blindness, and in the long term, can cause permanent damage to your form of cataracts.
Good morning, and we're back at Wire. Here we are joined by Professor Aaron Carpenter, who is a computer engineering professor here at Wentworth. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So the topic of the hour at the moment is we are discussing the Hillary email scandal. So for our listeners, basically, Hillary Clinton used a private server set up in her home to store government-related emails. Now, during her time as Secretary of State, she did have a lot of classified information on there, which is why it's so distressing, because a private server may not necessarily have the same kind of security as a government-issued one. So what we want to discuss is, and again, she had a private server set up in her home, but so did former Secretary of State Colin Powell, who used an AOL server, and that has not been deemed criminal. However, General David Petraeus, who is a former CIA director, pled guilty to criminal charges for, amongst other breaches, for using a Gmail server for classified information. So we wanted to ask, so how does the security of private, commercial, and government secured servers differ?
Sure. So the big difference between a private server versus a government server, I can leave out commercial for a moment, is the government might be running better intrusion software. They might have better firewalls. They have access to the NSA, which obviously is going to be better at all sort of cybersecurity things. But the problem is that all three are subject to hacking. Private emails get hacked, commercial emails get hacked, government emails get hacked. 2014 saw a government hacking of their servers, and you can go back and back and back, and actually comparisons between Senator or Secretary or whatever, Hillary Clinton's server versus the government. They both were using stale certificates, which are used for user verification, and there are in general just a lot of weaknesses in very broad terms, not speaking in terms of legality, but the government has access to a better response system when they do detect intrusion. And so then they can attack back, saying, that's why we're seeing Russia being tracked by the NSA and the DOD as, they have the staff, they have the protocols in place to respond to some sort of hack, where a private server, even with a mild staff, wouldn't be able to have the full weight of the U.S. government behind it.
Gotcha. Okay, very interesting. So in response to this, Donald Trump said that Hillary Clinton bleached her emails. Would you have an idea as to what that actually, what is this bleaching process?
Yeah, so anybody who's ever gotten rid of an old laptop or an old hard drive, they recommend that you bleach it, that you get rid of it. And when you delete a file, you don't actually delete a file. What happens is you just say, I no longer want this file. I'm just going to chuck it back into the bin. Right. And then if somebody with knowledge of how to access it does so, they can go back in and re-image it and find those pieces of data. It's basically, instead of shredding your document, you're just balling it up and throwing it in the garbage and hoping nobody finds it. So bleaching an email or bleaching a server is basically taking a hard drive and making sure everything on it is zeroed out. Everything gets erased. And that should be pretty standard for anybody. I mean, if I delete an email that has banking information, or if I delete something that comes from my kid's preschool, I want to make sure that I delete it and it gets deleted so that somebody can't go in, find it later off of some server or some hard drive later on.
Right. So, Professor, in other words, so what you're saying is, say I'm deleting a file and I moved it to the trash bin, and then I clicked empty trash bin. The file isn't actually deleted?
The file is deallocated from your server or your hard drive. It's basically saying, I don't want this anymore. But what servers don't do is actually go in and one by one change every bit. Everything that you have in email, all of it breaks down to just a series of bits or bytes, which is why we see gigabyte, megabyte, etc. Those bytes are not necessarily zeroed out. So it's still there. It still says 0101 and all these things. So if you don't overwrite it with something else, it's still there. It may be hard to read. It may not be easy to find. But that's why, if you mess up your phone, right, you could connect it back to something and say recover, right? You deleted a bunch of things, you hit remove, but then you didn't want it deleted. You can still go back in there. Those zeros and ones are always there until you go and clean them out, scrub them out. So that's what bleaching would be. And like I said, that should be, if I had any emails. When I deleted my last hard drive, I bleached it. Right when I got a new laptop, I bleached my hard drive. I ripped it apart, making sure that nobody would be able to retrieve anything from it. And that's exactly why.
So just to clarify, so the bleaching process is you're basically on the hard drive, each byte is turned into a 0. And so what is the actual physical process behind it?
You basically have to go through and save a 0 everywhere, or save a garbage value somewhere. Right. You don't want to leave any bit unturned. In cybersecurity, the biggest problem is if one bit can get out, then so can all the rest. So you need to get rid of every single bit. And in this case, just going in, this is one example, going in and writing 0 to literally every bit, every byte in there would bleach it. It's basically you're taking a shirt that has a bunch of stains on it, you're dumping it in bleach, it comes out, pristine white.
Right. So in regards to that, again, it's just really interesting. So would you use some kind of software to actually do this, or would you go, I know, like Jason Bourne style on it, put a magnet to
you could do that. I think when I saw these bleaching comments about Hillary Clinton servers, they used something, the BleachBit was a company or a software that they claim to use. I can't verify that one way or the other, but there's software for it. If you know what you're doing, you can actually do it yourself to to get rid of it. In my case, I actually deleted everything, I reformatted it, and then I literally took the hard drive apart. Wow. So it's now in 4 or 5 pieces somewhere. And so good luck if somebody wants to go diving into my old one.
Wow, that's quite impressive. So, as you mentioned, we have countries like Russia, we have China, potentially North Korea and Iran trying to snoop and hack our systems. So, in regards to Hillary's private server, what is the actual level of confidence with which computer experts can determine if Clinton's server was actually indeed accessed by those with malicious intent?
Yeah, intrusion detection is a whole topic of cybersecurity. I say we as a community of computer scientists, computer engineers, are pretty good at intrusion detection. You can sniff out IP addresses, you can sniff out the sources and the geographical locations. So it's basically looking for anomalous or unexpected behavior in the server. Her servers likely weren't getting accessed by people other than her and some of her staff. And so when an IP would come in that was from the wrong place, it could get sniffed out. In this case, I believe they didn't find any source of hacking on her servers. That might just be because it was luck and nobody hacked it. It could be that they actually had enough security in place that it was protected. Or it could be that the people in doing this hacking were sophisticated enough to hide their trail, right? Somebody snuck into the house and got back out and nobody knew the difference. But in general, we're pretty good at it. I mean, we can sniff out when something is intruded. In fact, we have that right here on Wentworth. I mean, we have a network set up downstairs that in Wentworth Hall that has been hacked from the outside, and students have found it. I mean, so it's this. If you're very sophisticated and you're very good, which some of these places are. I mean, China and Russia are both very good at cybersecurity. They could hide it, but in general, we're pretty good at it.
Wow!
So we can feel confident in the fact that if they said nobody hacked it, it's pretty likely nobody hacked it.
So in regards to the actual hacking part, so say say Russia hacks the server, wouldn't it be still pretty hard to track them down since they could use some kind of masking, like I don't know if the browser Tor, for example, that you have your IP scattered across the globe.
Sure, but in this case, because it's such a general purpose, I mean, sending in an email is one thing. I can send Clinton's email, a server an email, but when you are actually accessing it, they likely don't have a lot of people accessing their hardware. And so if these are just email servers and they're holding, files like our Gmail or your Wentworth or wherever it does, it's not likely that somebody is getting an IP that's coming from, the middle of Canada, which is then being bounced through a server in Iran, which is then being bounced to a server in Russia. I mean, those things, it's not necessarily that they would be able to track who the hacker was. It would be more that they would track if there was a hacker.
Gotcha.
That's the bigger thing.
Sir, thank you so much for joining us. Believe it or not, the time is actually 10:30 a.m., and it's time for a break. When we return, we'll be discussing Trump and how he avoids his federal income taxes. And you're listening to Indecision 2016 here on Wire, Wentworth's internet radio station.
Wire's home for the Patriots, Red Sox, Celtics, and Bruins. Down the Wire Sports Talk.
Straight cash, homie.
You can listen to Down the Wire Sports Talk from 2 to 4 every Tuesday.
I'm ready for war.
You could be the superhero that Boston needs. The average person creates 4 pounds of trash every day, but about 75% of this trash is recyclable. Just 100 soda cans could save enough energy to light your room for 2 weeks. Beatty Hall and many of the other buildings on campus have recycling bins that are clearly labeled. It only takes a bit of extra time. Your superpower could be reducing waste. This message is brought to you by the Leopard's Den.
So you've heard it over and over again. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. But have you really been listening to your mom lately? Breakfast provides vital nutrients and energy for getting over that mid-morning slump. It also helps to maintaining a healthy body weight. Just grab some toast, fruit, or cereal and you're good to go. It takes just a few minutes every morning to be healthy. So start listening to your mom again. This message has been by the Leopards.
Good morning. You're listening to Indecision 2016, the College of Fenway's political news show looking at the upcoming election. And this is Wire, Wentworth Institute of Technology's internet radio station. It is now 10:31 a.m., and we actually wanted to continue our previous discussion in regards to cybersecurity and Clinton's email scandal. So I'm joined here in our studio with Professor Aaron Carpenter, who is a computer engineering professor here at Wentworth. And so where we left off, we were talking about cybersecurity and Clinton server and, the hacking and whatnot. But we wanted to turn our attention in regards to information security. So in general, information security has been of particular concern in recent years and been a major talking point. What are the benefits and risks of the proposed policies of both major candidates from a computer science perspective, or computer engineering perspective?
Sure. So I believe the two that typically come up are encryption for investigative purposes, like we saw in the recent shooting. They wanted to hack the person. They wanted Apple to hack through somebody's phone.
Right.
So having backdoors to encryptions. And the other one is usually net neutrality. So net neutrality is basically saying we don't want to have 85% of the net controlled and siphoned through private corporations or even the government. So net neutrality is something that it's basically like saying we're not going to let people have internet radio shows because you might say something that offends us, or you might not be able to have the airspace. You can't post anything you want outside your window.
Right.
That's air neutrality, right? Site neutrality. Net neutrality would be saying, I'm going to change the makeup of how the internet works. And I mean, we've all sort of grown up in this internet age of I have everything I want at my fingertips at all times. Right. That all goes away with without net neutrality. Because now Comcast can say, you know what? I don't like Netflix because you're taking up my time and my energy and my bits. I'm going to say you can't use Netflix if you have Comcast. And that would be legal if we get rid of net neutrality because they can do whatever they want. They own the IP. They own the connection to your house. And I know I like Netflix, so I don't want that to happen. Now, in terms of encryption backdoors, as I mentioned in the previous segment, if one bit can get out, that's bad.
Right.
And if we have a backdoor, that's basically like handing somebody a master key. If the person with the master key is trusted and that key is safe, then that's no problem at all. And we all like to live in this idealistic world. Well, that would be true, but it's not true. Master keys get lost, master keys get stolen, master keys get copied. And now who has it and who's going to use it, and for good purposes or for bad, right? We're not talking about a vigilante. We're talking about people who are, terrorists could hack into this. So Apple didn't want to give up their encryption. They have an encrypted software that they use. If they were forced to create that, it's there now. It's proof that, look, we can hack this phone. Anybody can hack this phone. Now think about what these cybersecurity people in Russia or China are going to do. eventually they'll hack your phone, or they'll hack
Wow.
the phone of somebody in power that actually has real information. So building in these backdoors, I can see why people want it, but that's why we have the legal system that we have, right? If you need to get through this, you have to go through the court process, and opening up that back door to anybody, or to say we even have it, it's just a matter of time before somebody hacked it for real.
Wow, that's really quite incredible. So, for our listeners, to sum it up, so essentially, as long as there's a back door to a secure software, to an encrypted software, it's only a matter of time until an exploit is actually developed to bypass and to actually get into the system. So that's quite worrisome. So I believe candidate Donald Trump actually wanted to get into the San Bernardino's shooter's phone.
Yes, so Donald Trump is against net neutrality, and he is pro implementing a backdoor for government agencies for encryption.
Right.
Hillary Clinton is a little bit less clear on her goals with cybersecurity, so I won't really elaborate on that too much, but it is sort of a scary prospect, the cyber world that Donald Trump implies. It really has a corporatism that's a little concerning.
Yeah, and in the terms of the back door, I said I understand why people would want it. They want the safety to know that their government is going to be able to protect them if they needed it. The issue being that when you make that back door, how do you secure it? Because if you've got guards on it that are really good and secure, so to speak, then why isn't there a backdoor to that security, and then a backdoor to the security that protects that? And eventually you get down to it, everything can be hacked.
Right.
And one of the fundamental things, anybody who watches the movies and the TV shows that talk about cybersecurity, a lot of it's social engineering, right? I don't need to get your key. I need to convince you to give me your key.
Right.
And so if that backdoor exists, what's to say that somebody doesn't give an engineer $1 million to hand over how to do that?
Wow.
And so having these backdoors, I said it makes sense why, but the safeguards that are in place are just not there. And so to insist that all these backdoors are there opens us all up to hacking, and whether you have something to hide or not, that's a scary proposition.
Right, exactly.
Well, and everyone has financial data, etc., on these systems, even if you've never used a computer. I mean, you had the Target hack a few years back, the Home Depot. It really does affect everyone, even people who think that they're completely off of the grid.
Wow.
So it's a scary prospect.
No, absolutely. Especially deciding the legality of it. Who decides what is right and what is wrong. Essentially, when this information is in the hands of, say, the government. This is kind of reminiscent of George Orwell's 1984. But anyway, in regards to this discussion, Professor, what in your opinion, what is the best legislative action that Congress could take, in your opinion, for ensuring efficient digital communication of classified information while maintaining data security and integrity?
Sure, there's a couple. So in general, we just need to educate people. I mean, the general public freaked out about Hillary Clinton's email servers because they didn't understand them. They didn't understand what they were. They didn't understand how it was secured. What's the difference between 128-bit encryption and 1024-bit encryption? How much harder is that? And that is not of the fault of anybody. I mean, you're not trained in it. When I saw that she had her own servers, I thought, okay. If it's illegal, it's illegal. But at this point, the FBI sort of shrugged their shoulders a little bit at it. It's a matter of that Congress needs to make sure that our population, our electorate, is informed about this kind of thing. What does the math mean? What is encryption? How can you better protect yourself? It's not just about protecting the government's email, it's about protecting mine. I don't want my medical information out there. I don't want my financial data out there.
Right.
So why should I assume that they'll protect me, right? You could protect yourself by having strong passwords, by being careful about phishing scams and how all those hackings happen. So a lot of it does come down to just education of people. Now, and again, there's sort of two pieces. The older generation never used it and doesn't really care, and the younger generation has grown up with it, and so you don't think twice about it anymore. You just think, oh, I'm going to download this. I'm going to send an email. I'm going to access this thing. I grew up in this in between where I had no internet and then suddenly had internet. So I'm on a slightly different generation where I actually remember not, that email waiting for the dial-up to reach Juno's servers.
Right.
And, that was pre-security. Now I'm hyper-vigilant about security to the point where I have long emails and I'm careful about, people write emails down on the piece of paper, which makes no sense. The other piece is we have very smart people who can do this stuff. I came from a university before that has cybersecurity as a strength in their research. We're actually trying to do the same thing here at Wentworth. There's a consortium of a few professors, including myself, that are trying to get cybersecurity to be a minor or their talk of a major. And we need money to train students, and we need money to do the research. And that money comes typically from the NSF or the DoD. And unfortunately, those funds get cut more and more every year. 5%, 10%, 15% makes it harder and harder and harder for us to get money to do this kind of thing, whether it's education or research. And if this would, this might make a difference for you, I'm guessing Donald Trump does not support the NSF funding quite as strongly as Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton's husband, President Clinton, had one of the strongest NSF backings of the last couple presidents.
Wow.
And put lots of money into it. And that, if Hillary would be in the same line as her husband was when he was president, would support NSF funding. Typically, the Democratic presidents give more to NSF funding because they know that it pays long-term dividends. It's not research for research's sake. It's if somebody can develop an unhackable machine, then isn't that worth the $500,000 that we put into it to pay for a couple of PhDs to get their degree and make the math for it? That is something that doesn't come up a lot. It hasn't come up yet in these debates. We haven't seen the third one yet, so maybe we'll talk about it a little bit more. But the funding of research and education has to be at the forefront of any discussion about this, because that's where it stems from. Where did we get RSA encryption? Professors and researchers came up with it. Where did we get the intrusion detection? Same thing. And so if we don't support that kind of research innovation, and we don't support the education of our students, whether it's undergrad, graduate, whatever, then we're doing them a disservice. And in the end, it's going to bite us on the rear end when we get to the, a couple years from now when we're not good at it and other countries are, which is what we're starting to see, right? Russia and China are very good at this stuff. And we're good, but we could be better. And if we have the funds and we have the resources available to us, we certainly have the minds. We just need to point them in that direction and let them go.
So do you think that there's a fundamental disconnect between Congress and the computer science, computer engineering, cyber community regarding what is needed?
I think that there's a gap from what I see between Congress and science, not just cybersecurity. We have how many percent that don't believe in climate change, a huge amount that just disregards any science that they don't like. And you can, write me off as biased if you'd like, but I don't really mind that. I believe in science, and there are congressmen and senators, or Congress people, I should say, and senators and people in positions of power that don't believe it. And that's not because, I don't think it's because they're stupid. I don't think it's because they're ignorant. I think it's just that they haven't been educated. And so if we could have somebody, break it down and really have them understand what's going on, whether it's in cybersecurity or not, I think that could make a real difference. If they understood that these areas are important for not just research, but for national security and for the betterment of the United States, then I think that they would make maybe some different decisions.
Wow. Yeah, and Professor Carpenter does bring up an excellent point about cybersecurity in general. Where we're heading is towards a concept of Internet of Things, where everything is connected, and things reminiscent of Stuxnet. That's pretty scary stuff. I mean, if our infrastructure,
and something that people don't think about is how we can attack you without actually attacking you. So let's say I do an Internet of Things, and I connect my coffee maker, and my coffee maker starts at 6. Well, that would tell a burglar that I wake up at 6.
Right.
Which means that if they came in at 5, or they knew they could get out of the house at 5, I'm likely to be fast asleep. That is not something you'd think about with Internet of Things. It's just trying to make some coffee.
Yeah.
But that is information that you don't want a bad person having. And if we open it all up and we don't have security nets on this, it will be, we'll find, burglars are smart, they'll find new ways.
All right.
All right.
Well, I think that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for being with us today.
No, thank you.
Thank you. So, believe it or not, it's actually 10:44 a.m. and it's time for a break. When we return, we'll be actually talking about Trump and how he avoids his federal income tax. You're listening to Indecision 2016 here on Wire, Wentworth's internet radio station.
Sorry, I messed up one of your segments.
Do you like?
No, that was
yes,
perfect.
of course. Do you like listening to people talk?
Well, sure.
You hear about the
Did
people
you
that
know
go
that
to
normal talking
airports, steal
volume
the cars,
is between
take the
40 and
GPS
60
home?
decibels, and rock concerts volume
So
can
they
be
can go
between
rob them.
110 to 140 decibels?
Wow. No, I didn't.
Now, headphones volumes can be upwards of 110 decibels, and I don't think you want to have a rock concert in your ears all day. Do yourself a favor, keep the volume
Would
down.
you like a
and take
healthy,
break.
efficient, and environmentally friendly
Oh,
way
yeah,
to
you
get
were
around
talking about
Boston?
that.
Consider changing your commute for the better by riding a bicycle. Investing in a bicycle can help you travel
do
to work
election
or
machine
school faster while benefiting motorists by reducing street congestion. Not to mention the great workout you earn every time you
I can
cycle.
do it, and that's
With
scary.
a fitted helmet and safety lights, anyone can enjoy cycling to their destination safely. More information is available online at massbike.org.
So you've heard it over and over again. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. But have you really been listening to your mom lately? Breakfast provides vital nutrients and energy for getting over that mid-morning slump. It also helps to maintaining a healthy body weight. Just grab some toast, fruit, or cereal, and you're good to go. It takes just a few minutes every morning to be healthy. So start listening to your mom again. This message is brought to you by the
Hello, we're back. You're listening to Indecision 2016, Wentworth's own political coverage of the November elections. And this is Wire, Wentworth Institute of Technology's internet radio station. It is now 10:46 a.m., and we're going to turn our attention in this final segment to Donald Trump and basically how he admitted to avoiding federal income tax. So for our listeners, as a review, so most recently it was revealed that he declared a $916 million loss on his 1995 tax returns, which allowed him to avoid paying federal income tax for the next 18 years. Now, please note that this only enabled him not pay federal income tax, and this does not carry over to sales tax, city tax, employee tax, property tax, etc. And when questioned on this matter, Trump claimed that it's just smart, which honestly, Matt, frankly, I kind of agree with it, because if you look at it from one perspective, if you look at it, basically what this tells me is that this is a businessman who saw a loophole in the system that wasn't patched, and he exploited it. And in my opinion, I feel like he's not the first, and he's certainly not the last. And maybe perhaps it's the legislature's job to really patch those holes.
No, I think that's a very good point, and I think it ties directly into the issue of the Clinton speeches to Wall Street. This is exactly what businesses do.
Yep.
They manipulate loopholes, they find loopholes, and they make a way for them to keep the money that they feel they are entitled to. What I think is more interesting is how Donald Trump handles his individual finances and how he does his charitable giving, which is, I think the New York Times reached out to over 300 charitable organizations to see what he had given, and he had given almost none of what he said he gave, which is really scary. It's I believe it's a New York Times piece where they interviewed 300 different New York area charities, and particularly the ones that he had connections to, be it personal or otherwise.
Right. But in general, I think we can all agree that although Trump was being kind of a, words that we cannot say on the air, we can't say this on the air. He was being a certain someone.
A four-letter word.
A four-letter word. But at the same time, he hasn't necessarily, in regards to this, he really hasn't done anything illegal. And to go after him would be kind of would be rather strange, because you're essentially going after somebody who is simply exploiting the system. Not that it's morally just or anything like that.
Right.
But at the same time, we should be rather going after our, lawmakers, legislatures, in order to essentially patch these loopholes. And one of the things too, what's interesting actually, is that Trump keeps, during the debates especially, this gets brought up all the time, but we want to see Trump's tax returns and what he actually pays. And he keeps bringing up the fact that, he's currently undergoing an audit, and that...
well, the IRS has said he's welcome to release them, so that excuse just doesn't fly with me, personally.
So it really makes no sense. So, although, basically, it seems to me like, although he hasn't broken any particular laws, he may have, come close to that line, seeing as he doesn't seem to be in a rush to really show his tax returns and what he actually paid. And what this tells me is it certainly won't make him look good, for one, but second of all, he might be breaking some laws, and as we know, when it comes to things of this matter, typically the litigation process, it takes a very extremely long time, years even. So it makes sense for Trump to actually draw this out instead of just kind of give. So he is being smart by doing that. But at the same time, this should concern people. This should really make people think about whether or not, he's somebody that we necessarily want to be president. Now somebody could argue, right? Somebody could argue, say that, hey, Trump, he's a well-known businessman. He's been in the industry for a really long time, and that he knows the tricks of the trades. He knows these loopholes. So, given the executive power of a president, he would be able to patch these loopholes. But honestly, what do you guys think? Do you think he would do something like this, or would he?
So, I think he would probably try to fix them, but the thing is, it's weird that this man wants to be president, but will try to pay as little taxes as possible, since the tax money is essentially what makes our society run. It pays for schools, bridges, roads, fire and police, everything. So it's weird that for somebody who wants to lead the country won't even pay their fair share, I guess, to even try to maintain it, I guess.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So I think he would probably I think he would try to fix them, but honestly, I don't know, because I feel like he could potentially lose business partners from his business days, and then because they are probably using the same loophole, and they'll be like, if you get rid of this, your business and ours will not be in business anymore. And so it could kind of get weird like that. So I don't actually know what's going to happen at all.
I think for me personally, that's the largest issue, is looking at his personal returns and his businesses, the Trump Foundation, etc. Largely because we don't know who his business connections are to. There's been a lot of speculation that he has business dealings with the Russian oligarchs.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to know about that.
Yeah, exactly. No,
I don't think our president should be tied to them, and he hasn't really come out and said he's going to have an independent party controlling his business. He said, "Oh, my kids will do it," and people are like, "Well, they're going to be coordinating management with you," and he's like, "No, they won't."
Wow.
It's like, yeah, they will.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, in general, something I guess to consider for our listeners, and just to consider for everybody in general. If you really think about it, it's kind of weird that Trump actually wants to be president, because essentially moving into the White House, it seems like it would be a downgrade for him. So it makes me kind of wonder, what's he really after, and how come he wants it so bad? So I feel like something like this could maybe even backfire, where he would continue to exploit these, or he would continue to maintain and even maybe create the loopholes that are used by large corporations to avoid paying.
Well, there's been a little bit of speculation in the media that his claims of the rigging election is setting him up for a place where he can concede and say, the media tried to rig this election.
Right.
I'm going to make my own media conglomerate. He's already working with, I believe, Roger Ailes, unofficially, the former Fox News director of some sort. He's got all sorts of media personalities lined up. I think his son-in-law has paid for some sort of news network for the future and has
Right.
like written up business plans for one. So it does seem that he's setting up for a failed campaign where he can sort of pretend that he's the nice guy and go and start his own news conglomerate.
Wow, it's really quite surprising, but at the same time, it makes a lot of sense, especially given the current polls. I mean, it depends who you go by, but according to multiple news sources, he is in fact lagging behind Clinton. So he and tomorrow is the third presidential debate, so he's going to have to, and to our listeners, you really should be paying attention to this stuff, and most certainly pay attention to because tomorrow it's actually the final presidential debate before the election, so both candidates will be going all out, and it will be certainly interesting to see what they each have to say. Certainly how they're going to address the issues. I know that over the past two debates, there's just been utter, question dodging and trying to spin it one way or the other to suit that respective side's agenda, rather than actually answering the question. So hopefully this won't be a waste of time and we'll actually able to get some answers. But it seems so far that that both candidates are really steadfast about just kind of holding their composure, not really letting the scandals kind of affect them. And anytime that they do get brought up, both candidates actually get quite aggressive and quite defensive and try to redirect it in some way. But
it is interesting, and I think we do have that debate tomorrow. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the following weeks. I know for me personally, my early voting in my hometown of Winchester, Mass.
Right.
Opens tomorrow.
Wow.
So I can actually go and vote tomorrow. I can vote this weekend. If I fill out the proper form, I'm a registered voter, I can go and do that.
Right.
So I'd encourage most of our listeners to check when your early voting is in the state of Massachusetts. You might be eligible to go vote leisurely on a Saturday. You might think you can't because it's on a Monday and you have work, but you know, it's possible to go and vote. I'm going to vote this weekend, so whatever happens after that happens. But just encourage everyone to get out and make sure that their voices are heard.
Right. And actually, we wanted to mention to our listeners that that Wednesday, October 19th, which is tomorrow, is the registration deadline in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Registration can be completed or updated online. And to submit an online application for voter registration, residents must have a valid driver's license, learner's permit, or non-driver ID issued by the Registry of Motor Vehicles. Anyone without an ID from the RMV can register by creating an online application, printing the form, and mailing or bringing it to a local election official. And also, voters can also use the online system to change their registered name or address and edit their party enrollment. So just because you're registered Democrat or registered Republican or something like that doesn't mean that, you have to vote for that candidate. That'd just be.
I'm not sure that means that even if you are registered with a party, I'm pretty sure you can vote however you want. No one's stopping you.
I mean, especially this election, when you look at it, I mean, it really quite is indecision. It's so indecisive. I mean, let's not forget our third-party candidate, Gary Johnson, from a Libertarian Party. But honestly, I don't know, if you follow the news, he doesn't seem like the brightest guy either.
Yeah, he's kind of goofy. I don't know what I think about him yet.
So I mean, I was trying to I honestly tried to like the guy. I honestly tried. I did my best, and I just couldn't do it because he at one point, this was at I think it was at University of New Hampshire, where he was giving like a presentation or something. But somebody asked him a question, and he got so aggressive. And this was kind of a thing. Like, I was trying to see, I was trying to honestly listen to what he has to say, and I get that he's very passionate about some issues, but at the same time, the way he conveys It seems like he's letting his almost rage take over. Like if somebody cut like is this guy gonna launch nukes or something? If somebody cuts him off
if we're gonna talk about rage, you have to look at our Republican ticket here.
Yeah, that's true.
But
that's
I think
true.
for me personally, the saving grace of the third party libertarian ticket is definitely Bill Weld.
Bill Weld.
He's very calm. He's very collected. I personally find him very respectable. I wish he was the top of the ticket.
I'm actually writing this down now. Bill Weld. All right, I have some research.
He's the VP running with Gary Johnson.
Right.
But
So, dear listeners, we have unfortunately time has come to an end. Thank you for listening to Uncovering the Truth here on Wire, Wentworth's internet radio station. Stay tuned. In the next hour, you'll be hearing some wonderful mix of music, and we all hope you have a wonderful week.